The legend was whispered in the dim light of the briefing rooms and over the clatter of chow hall trays. It was a story told by grizzled chiefs with more salt than a week-old MRE, a tale that made the newest SEALs roll their eyes and the most seasoned operators fall silent. It was about the ghost shooter. He had no rank, no name. There was no file on him, no commendations, no photos in a leather-bound album on some admiral's shelf. But according to the legend, if you were in the deepest, blackest part of a mission gone sideways, you'd feel his presence. A single, unseen savior who could make a 100-meter shot in a hurricane, a man who could vanish into thin air, and for whom the bravest men on Earth would break protocol and render a salute. Lieutenant Mason Reaper Riley, fresh from Bud S. and a lightning-quick ascent through the ranks, thought it was utter bunk. He had earned his trident the hard way, with sweat, blood, and a mind like a steel trap. He didn't believe in ghosts, only in firepower, training, and the iron brotherhood of his team, Echo Platoon. Their current mission was a textbook op: infiltrate a narcotics cartel's jungle compound, extract a high-value asset, and get out clean. Simple, until it wasn't. The jungle had been a living, breathing enemy long before the cartel's foot soldiers became one. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of decay and blooming flora, a humid blanket that muffled sound and clung to sweat-soaked uniforms. The intel had been solid, but it was also 3 days old. In the fluid, ruthless world of the jungle cartels, 3 days was an eternity. As they approached the target, the silence was their first warning. A silence that wasn't natural. The usual symphony of chirping insects and distant howler monkeys had ceased. Reaper held up a fist, and the team froze, melting into the dense foliage. He scanned the tree line, his thermal optics painting the world in shades of green and gold, but saw nothing. Just the deep, impenetrable green wall of the jungle. Then, the ambush erupted. Not from the front as expected, but from the flanks and rear. A storm of automatic gunfire tore through the air, chewing up leaves and splintering tree trunks. Echo platoons scattered, returning fire, but they were outmatched, their escape route cut off. Reaper dived behind the thick buttress of a mahogany tree, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The radio hissed with static and shouted orders. 2 of his men were down, wounded but still fighting. Reaper, we're pinned. A voice, laced with the panic he rarely heard, crackled over the comms. They've got us in a crossfire. There's too many. Reaper sighted a figure in the distance, partially obscured by a fallen log, laying down suppressive fire. He squeezed his trigger, but the shot went wide. The enemy fire intensified, zipping past his head, kicking up dirt and bark. He was caught, exposed, and for the first time in his career, he felt a cold, sharp dread. And then, the impossible happened. A faint red dot, impossibly small and steady, appeared on the chest of the cartel soldier, pinning down his team. It moved for a fraction of a second, then settled, and the soldier's head snapped back with a soft, wet thud. Reaper stared, bewildered. The shot had come from somewhere beyond the tree line, at least 500 meters away, through thick jungle cover. A shot that would have been impossible for even the best sniper with the best gear. Another faint dot appeared on a second soldier, then a third. One by one, the targets dropped. The enemy fire, which had been a relentless torrent moments ago, began to falter, then cease altogether. Reaper and his team, breathing heavily, looked at each other with wide eyes. No one had seen a thing. No muzzle flash, no sound, just the clean, silent deaths of their attackers. It was as if a ghost was moving through the trees, a silent avenger with a rifle. As the team leader, Master Chief Petrov moved to retrieve the wounded. Reaper's eyes scanned the jungle for any sign of their phantom savior. He saw nothing, not a shadow, not a flicker of movement. The only evidence was the rapidly cooling bodies of their attackers, each with a single, perfectly placed bullet wound. "Petrov," Reaper said, his voice a low, disbelieving whisper. "Was that?" The Master Chief looked at him, his face a mask of grim experience. "Don't ask, just be grateful. And get your ass in gear. We still have a mission." They moved deeper into the compound, now on high alert. The earlier ambush had been just the first layer of the defense. They breached the main building, a dilapidated structure that served as the cartel's command center, and found their asset. A young analyst who had been kidnapped for his knowledge of financial networks. As they were securing him, the main force of the cartel's security team swarmed the building. The firefight was brutal and close quarters. Reaper, with his CQB training, was in his element, but the sheer numbers were overwhelming. They were pushed back, trapped in a dead-end corridor with the analyst. A hail of bullets sprayed the drywall, peppering their position with debris. Just as a man with a grenade launcher took aim, a window at the far end of the hallway shattered. A single, perfectly weighted object soared through the air, landing at the man's feet. It wasn't a grenade, it was a rock. A large, perfectly chosen rock that clattered loudly. For a moment, the man paused, a single second of hesitation. It was all the time the ghost needed. A gunshot, barely audible over the din. And the man's head was thrown back, the grenade launcher clattering uselessly to the floor. Reaper's eyes went wide. He looked up at the window, and for the briefest moment, he saw him. A fleeting silhouette, just a dark shape against the gloom. No more than a phantom of a man, but the shape was holding a rifle. A second later, it was gone. The battle raged on, but the ghost continued his silent work. From the rafters, from behind a heavy bookshelf, from a hole in the ceiling, a flash of something metallic or a quick, silent movement. He was everywhere and nowhere. The cartel soldiers, their bravado giving way to a superstitious terror, began to falter, firing wildly at shadows. They were fighting a ghost they couldn't see, a legend they were only now realizing was a very real, very lethal force. Finally, the firefight ended. The corridor was silent, filled with the acrid smell of gunpowder and the groans of the wounded. Echo Platoon had survived, all thanks to a series of impossibly perfect shots and an uncanny ability to be in the right place at the right time. They secured the analyst and prepared for exfiltration, as they moved toward the rendezvous point. Their escape was nearly thwarted by a sniper positioned on a water tower, a full kilometer away, with a clear line of sight to their path. It was an ambush they hadn't seen coming. Petrov, spotting the threat, knew they couldn't outrun it. The shot was too easy for the enemy sniper, too impossible for them to counter. "We're dead," Reaper Petrov grunted. "That's his shot. We're in the open." Reaper squinted at the tower. He could barely make out the glint of the enemy sniper's scope. He was a professional, but this was a losing proposition. He was about to order the team to scatter and pray when a voice, impossibly clear and calm, came through his earpiece. It wasn't Petrov's, and it wasn't any of his team. Dust mote, 2 degrees west, the voice whispered, barely a breath of sound. Reaper's brain, a finely tuned instrument of combat, registered the words instantly. A sniper's trick, an invisible guide. He raised his rifle, adjusted his scope, and focused. His own crosshairs were still off target. He took a breath, held it, and listened to the whisper again. Now. He squeezed the trigger, not a millisecond before or after, but at the precise moment the word was spoken. The rifle kicked against his shoulder, and he watched, his breath caught in his throat, as the enemy sniper fell from the tower, a limp doll, plunging to the ground. The wind, the distance, the angle. The shot was a miracle. Reaper looked at Petrov, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and disbelief. Who was that? Petrov shook his head, a wry smile on his face. Told you not to ask. The exfiltration was uneventful after that. The ghost had done his work. As they boarded the extraction helicopter, the blades kicking up a whirlwind of dust and debris, Reaper looked back. He saw nothing. No figure, no flash of light, nothing. Just the deep, unforgiving green of the jungle. They returned to base, the mission a success. The analyst was safe, and the team was whole. The debrief was short and to the point. The official report would state that Echo Platoon had successfully overcome the ambush and neutralized all threats. There would be no mention of a ghost, no explanation for the impossible shots, no credit given to the phantom presence that had saved them. Later that night, as Reaper sat alone on a bench outside the barracks, he saw him. Not a man in full gear, but a figure in worn fatigues, a man of medium height and nondescript build. He was sitting on a crate in the shadows, cleaning his rifle. The rifle itself was a thing of beauty, a sleek, custom-built machine, silent and deadly. Reaper rose, his heart hammering in his chest. This was him, the ghost. The man looked up, his face a canvas of deep lines and sun-weathered skin. His eyes were old, wise, and kind. He wasn't a swaggering soldier or a grizzled veteran. He was just a man. He didn't have a patch on his uniform, no insignias, no rank. He was nobody. Reaper approached, 100 questions burning on his tongue. He wanted to know his name, his story, how he did what he did. But a lifetime of discipline and respect for the unknown took over. He stopped a few feet away, stood at attention, and raised his hand in a slow, deliberate salute. The salute was a non-negotiable symbol of respect for a superior officer. But in this case, it was more. It was a salute to a warrior, a guardian angel, a legend. The man didn't return the salute. He simply nodded, a slow, understanding gesture, as if acknowledging the change in Reaper, the transformation from a cocky young operator to a humbled, grateful man. Then, he rose, slung his rifle over his shoulder, and walked into the shadows. Reaper watched him go, a sense of profound humility settling over him. He had been taught that courage was in the fight, in the head-on charge, in the visible act of valor. But he had learned a new lesson. True greatness was in the silent act, the selfless sacrifice, the willingness to operate without recognition, to be a ghost in the machine, a whisper in the dark. From that day on, the legend of the ghost shooter was no longer just a story to him. It was a lived experience. It was the memory of a bullet that had saved his team, a whisper that had saved his life. And whenever he saw a SEAL, even a crusty old Master Chief, He understood why they carried that silent reverence. He had been there. He had seen the ghost, and he had saluted. And he knew, with a certainty that was as unshakable as his resolve in combat, that the ghost had saluted him back, not with the hand, but with the quiet, powerful grace of a legend.